All right, here in the United States and around the world, there seems to be culture wars. There seems to be a lot of people waking up realizing that there are these elite that are trying to control us, create the rules, rules for us, but rules they don't have to follow. And today I have an incredible guest with me, Witt, to talk about what's going on here in the United States and how they're trying to control us. Will, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I first came across your material through Dennis Prager on Prager University. You were on a college campus. You were dressed up like a Chinese person, and then in another video, dressed up in like a Mexican person, traditional garb of those cultures. And the students and the faculty on campus were harassing you. They were calling you a racist. They were saying that you were committing cultural appropriation. Then you took those same outfits and you went to Chinatown and to Mexican restaurants, and the people absolutely loved that you were representing their culture, that you were celebrating their culture. Why do you think college students and college campus professionals and the media had such a negative reaction to you, while the people of these cultures had such a positive reaction to you?
Yeah, I love those videos. And I just got back from a month-long book tour, and a lot of these students on these campuses, when they're promoting me to come on their campus and speak about the book and everything, they're like, he's the guy who dressed up in the sombrero and went around on the college campus. That's one of the main reasons that people know me from those cultural appropriation videos. But those videos are irrefutable evidence that the left is wrong on these issues. I think that we kind of case closed that cultural appropriation is not a thing, but what it is entitled, spoiled people who want to show that they have some sort of moral superiority over others by thinking that they need to defend someone who they deem as lower than them. And so really, it's a very narcissistic, vain, and prideful, I guess, mindset to think that you need to come in and save these people, that you are the savior of Black people, the savior of Mexicans, the savior of Chinese. I need to be this person to come and say, oh, this person's a racist and terrible and horrible, and I'm the better person for coming and saving them. But these people aren't asking you to save them. They don't want to be saved. They want to be a part of America and express their culture within and integrate. And you are coming in as this savior, doing it only for yourself. They do it for themselves, not for the actual people who are doing it. I did also, I dressed up as an Indian and for Thanksgiving, and was giving out pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving and all this stuff and asking people what they're grateful for. That turned into a whole slew of problems when they ripped off my headdress and called me racist and death threats at me. Horrible. And so what I did, I went to the Navajo Indian Reservation in Window Rock, Arizona, and I asked them the same questions. And they said, no, it is cultural appreciation, not appropriation. We don't want someone else getting offended for us on our behalf. We have bigger problems to worry about. We have other things that concern us, not these small, minute things that make college students feel good because they have nothing of real value going on inside their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that they defend people that don't ask to be defended, and it's almost as if they think, well, oh, they're lower than me, or their voice won't get as much attention. It has to be me that does that. The only thing that I've have maybe a close second to that is when I go into like a Mexican restaurant or a Peruvian restaurant, Venezuelan restaurant, and I start speaking to them in Spanish, and it's obviously with a gringo accent, but they love that I'm there trying their food. I'm asking about their culture. I'm trying my best to speak in their language. And yet the world tries to divide us. And we'll get a little bit more into that because I know your book talks about these evil elite people. The other thing that I wanted to thank you for that you're not aware of is you were the first person that pointed out to me the strong connection between the KKK and the Democrat Party.
Oh,
I
thank you.
never knew that. That has been whitewashed. That has been covered up. I figured, oh my gosh, this must have been pre-slavery times before the great Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican, came in, and this was just a group. And after you pointed that out, I started digging in and realizing, oh my gosh, there was such a strong connection to the Democrat Party. and trying to hold on to the South and Jim Crow. And yet now they flip all of those on their head, and they're the group that looks after Black people, looks out for African Americans, and they have 90% of their vote. But I would guess that if I wasn't familiar with that, other people are probably not familiar with that. As you went around the country sharing that information, were people just flabbergasted and surprised as I was?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. People didn't know that the Republican Party was actually established as the anti-slavery party. That was the whole point of what it was. I went around, excuse me, and I asked many people in different videos about these same topics, history questions, basic history questions about the KKK, the Democrat Party, the Republican Party, and they had no idea and were just astounded. You know, they're so astounded, in fact, that many of them afterwards would go and tell me and say, well, I have to go look this up to make sure. I said, be my guest, go look it up. That's totally fine by me. You have that right. But they're so astounded because it's just so different than anything that they've been taught before. I mean, the public school system does not teach students any of the real truth about history or America or how people are even supposed to act and live in this country. It teaches them a watered down version that is supposed to turn people into victims and conquerors. You know, not a way of teaching people to be winners and fight against bad history and we can learn from it and go forward. It is just, here are the evil people, we're pitting you against them, even though it was actually the Democrats were pitting you against these people and pigeonholing them in a different group because we have the ability to do that because we are in power. And so this is one thing that I tell people all the time is that, like, we talk about the left and calling out their hypocrisy and the Democrats calling out their hypocrisy. Isn't it hypocritical that they started the KKK, but now are the ones proclaiming all this stuff for Black people, yada, yada, yada? When in reality, the left doesn't care about hypocrisy. The left doesn't care about being logical or any of this kind of stuff. So we have all these, you know, facts don't care about your feelings, and we're going to show how hypocritical the left is. But it doesn't matter because if the left and these elites are in power, it doesn't matter if they're hypocrites, if they're the ones holding the gun, if they're the ones who are in control of the school system. They're the ones in control of big pharma and the entertainment industry and big tech and the bureaucracy, bloated state and the government. It doesn't matter if they're hypocritical, if they have the ability and power at B to control you. So I think what we need to do going forward is stop calling out the left for their hypocrisy and start calling out their power and trying to take that power back from them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and education is a great example, educating people on the truth. I guess it would make sense that this wouldn't be taught in schools because the majority of money donated to schools is through the Democrat Party, and the majority of money donated back to Democrat candidates comes through the school system. And so it's
Teachers
this
unions
loop.
and everything.
Yeah. It's this loop that just keeps feeding itself over and over again, and then they get to control what is taught in schools. Well, I wanted to share those things with you as we jumped into this, but now I definitely want to hear about your book, Do Not Comply. Why did you write this book? How did you come up with that title? And then let's jump into a couple questions I have.
For sure, yeah. So the first book I did was called How to Win Friends and Influence Enemies. And this one was very much about all the interactions that I had on college campuses and on the streets and interviewing people, debating people, and how people can change their minds. And it was my idea, but also the publisher's idea, and then some other ideas, and it all kind of turned into one to make my first book. The second book was all my idea in the sense that this was the culmination of being in this political world and making videos and speaking and everything for the last 8 years, and what I found to be the most important things. Because Do Not Comply is about more than just COVID and masks and vaccines and these kind of things. That is, of course, important. I talk about it, but it's more than that. It is about anyone who is trying to turn you into a slave, anyone who is trying to come and say, you do not have the ability to think for yourself and you must follow in the footsteps of what we have laid out for you. Don't think, just do. And this is the wrong way to live as an American. America was not founded by people who follow orders. It was made by people who said, there is an authority here that is evil or corrupted, and we are going to fight against it to beat it and create something new and better and brilliant. And we have lost that in America. We have lost that sense of pride and American dream because the America that we have now is no longer the America of our founding. So I wanted to write "Do Not Comply" as sort of an antidote to the chaos that I see taking place in this country. The laziness, the vapid nonsense of our politics and how it's become a business, the elites in control of us and how they were able to get there, and also a way for people to break out of it, a way for people to be individuals again and fight against the powers that be, and even more than fight against, some power that be in government or industry, whatever it might be, to fight against the demons and the weaknesses that we have in ourselves that have turned us into the America that we have today. Because it's like we're always looking for some politician like Donald Trump or DeSantis or Joe Biden, maybe looking at one of these people and saying, when is this person going to do the things that is going to make this country better? Why isn't this person saving us? Why isn't this person fixing my community? But we're never looking in the mirror and saying, well, when am I going to fix these things? We're always looking for other people to take on the responsibility that we won't take on ourselves. And that is a fault. Of course, we're not all in these positions of power to be the president and that, but that's not the question that we should be asking. Like, I lived in California. Imagine if all the Republicans or Christians or conservatives in California stood up for what they really believed in and said, we don't really care so much about the politics anymore. We care about being good people. That state would be 1,000 times better in a day. But people aren't willing to do that. They're not willing to stand up out of fear or shame or guilt. And it's about time that we do, because otherwise we will lose everything that we have fought so hard to gain.
Yeah, I think the reality of cancel culture has put a lot of people back on their heels. For example, I don't like this about myself. I don't like this about my business, but I literally have to toe the line on what I say right here on YouTube, because even though I consider myself a truth teller, if I start going down certain topics, I literally have to mute myself or hold back, because I don't want to be canceled. I don't want my revenue to be turned off. I don't want my channel to implode. And I think that these elites, and we'll get more into that, they use pressure tactics to get people to comply and to not speak out, because we'll mess with your family. We'll make you lose your job. You'll lose your income. We'll publicly shame you. And this became incredibly evident to me. I was kind of catching on to it before COVID, but COVID really opened my eyes to the evil systematic demand for compliance, and then how they used tactics to get people to shame each other into certain behaviors. I remember sitting in church, being one of the only people not wearing a mask. And then now all this information has come out about how useless masks are. And standing 6 feet apart, we realize, oh my gosh, they literally pulled this number out of their butts. There's nothing behind it. In the beginning, telling us that COVID lived on everything for days and days. 20 million Americans would die within 90 days. And we didn't even see 20 million die worldwide, right? So these compliance tactics are used against us all the time. But do you think it's more these compliance tactics, or do you think, as someone who's been on these campuses on universities, that it's just dripping false information over and over again for years until people are more indoctrinated than forced into compliance?
Yeah, well, it's definitely both, because you have lots of people who, these Biden said they're spending all this money to get new COVID vaccines for people. And you got people on Twitter and in real life saying, I'm first in line for the next booster. That is not necessarily just an act of compliance to comply. That is someone who is indoctrinated into the system, who said, okay, I believe in the system. I think the system works, so I'm going to be a part of it and shame other people who don't do the same. But then on the other hand, you have people who, I know lots of people who got vaccinated so that they could go and get a job that they wanted or stay in school or any of these kind of things. And they were heartbroken about it. But instead of standing strong and doing the thing that they knew would be the hard choice, that what I say, they made the easy choice. They made the easy decision and compromised on the issue. And it's not even just compliance, it is compromising with evil, compromising with people who want to control us. I mean, you were just talking about having to compromise on the things that you say on your channel to not get shut down. I mean, it goes even way higher. Think about Donald Trump. Donald Trump just recently in that Meet the Press interview compromised on the issue of abortion. They asked him about the 15-week ban, and he said, well, I don't know if I'd sign it. Then they asked him about Florida's 6-week ban. He said that was terrible. You know, why did he compromise on these things? He compromised so that he could reach a larger swath of people to get them to all vote for him. Because abortion, you know, being unequivocally pro-life, like myself, like I am, is not very popular with a lot of the American population to make it that way. And so he had to compromise on the things that are true and the things that are right so that he could reach more people. And this is a fault of politics. It's a fault of the elites. It's a fault of us having to live in this country today. And because of that, we have become so weak and soft, and we're willing to compromise on the things we really believe in just for a little bit of safety. And that compromise and compliance is the end of America as we know it.
Yeah, yeah. And just to be clear, YouTube, the COVID shots were a miracle. In fact, they're so good, you have to get 6 or 7 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. Okay. Anyway, yeah. Imagine a shot so good, you have to get 6 of them.
Hmm.
Tell me a little bit more. I don't want you to give away the book because I want people to go out and get it for themselves and really dive into the awesomeness of your research. But what were some other big topics where you want to warn the American people against complying too easily?
I think the one that I enjoyed the most writing about in terms of the elites in control of us was Big Pharma, because people have no idea how deep it goes with Big Pharma and what they're doing in this country. They lobby more than any other organization in this country, more than the fracking oil billionaires and the gun lobby and these types of people. Big Pharma outspends them by wide margins. You know, Pfizer made what in 2021 made $19 billion that year. In 2022 made $102 billion. They're making $1,000 every second of every day on a vaccine that was funded. The research was funded not by them out of their own benevolence. It was funded by the taxpayer. And then if something happens to you from taking this vaccine, God forbid, you know, you get injured by it, have a miscarriage. I mean, all these different things that are happening all over the place. Something like this happens to you, you can't then sue Pfizer, you can't sue Moderna, you then go to the Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund, a bureaucratic process where now the taxpayer is responsible for paying off the injuries and damages that happen from these vaccines. I mean, it is just monumentally evil to a degree that is I mean, never before seen. The big pharma cartel is what it really is almost in complete control of this country, because then they fund the media, they fund the entertainment industry, they fund the government. I mean, they have so much control over everything we do. People have no idea. You think the food studies that we see and the pharmaceutical studies we see and all this, it's all nonsense. And yeah, I mean, it is corrupt people who want to keep you as a slave. It's a Brave New World. In Brave New World, they have the drug soma, which is what keeps the people docile and contented and always happy and go lucky. And that's essentially what Big Pharma is in America today. It is our new soma, where they produce these drugs and tell people, you know, a little bit of alcohol is good for you and this kind of stuff, and marijuana is really good for you and all this, which is all nonsense. And then they tell you these things to control you and turn you into a docile sheep who doesn't ever think about the bigger issues.
Yeah. Uh, During COVID, it was pointed out to me how much the media companies receive from Big Pharma. For example, excuse me, Anderson Cooper makes almost $10 million from Big Pharma. Do you think he is ever going to tell the truth about one of Pfizer or somebody else's side effects? No, he would never compromise. If you were being paid $10 million to shove a drug down somebody's throat, you're never going to be unbiased against pushing that down somebody's throat. Same thing with, look at the Sackler family, made billions and billions and billions of dollars killing Americans with opioids, and they were doing it while throwing massive parties, celebrating their success. They've never really apologized. They tried to file bankruptcy to get away from it. I mean, these are the companies that are these are the companies that are telling people, hey, remind people, hey, whether you're religious or not, whether you believe God gave you arms or not, this arm belongs to the flu shot and this arm belongs to the COVID shot. No,
Hmm.
these arms belong to me and I can make my own decisions. But the media literally cannot give you an unbiased experience of these medical drugs, or else they would literally go out of business overnight if they lost those media contracts.
Yeah, I mean, Big Pharma spends, I mean, Fox News, like the conservative paragon of media, 70% of their ads on non-election years are from Big Pharma. I mean, they are just taking hand over fist all this money. I mean, it's essentially a money laundering operation. And then you have Big Pharma advertising. I mean, they advertise 9 out of 10 of the biggest Big Pharma companies spend more on advertising than they do on new cancer research. $15 billion a year on advertising from Big Pharma. 15 billion. You think that people are going to make unbiased decisions when all they're seeing all over the place is big pharma ads, and their favorite influencers and personalities on TV are talking about big pharmaceutical companies and how great these drugs are and all this stuff, and how great this new food diet thing is, which is obviously probably nonsense. I mean, it is all controlled, and then the government is taking money for their lobbying and for their campaigns, hand over fist again, from these big pharma companies, that essentially has made the politicians their bitch. That's all that it is. That's all that it is. And these politicians, I mean, I'm only 27 years old, right? But I think just in my life, let's say even 15 years, I can't think of one thing that a Republican politician, other than maybe Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis here in Florida, where I live now, has done that has made my life better. Not one thing that a Republican congressman has done that has made my life better. I don't look at these people and think, oh, thank God for Kevin McCarthy and this thing that he did that just completely changed my life. Thank God for him. I've never said that, and probably will never say that, because these people are all bought and paid for. These Republicans, these Democrats, the bureaucracy, the deep state, they're bought out by big pharma and these other lobbying corporations, and there's no sense of being a public servant anymore. It's all about the fame and the celebrity, and that's what we've turned them into.
Yeah. Yeah. Public servant to multimillionaire.
Yeah.
The subtitle of your book is Taking Power Back from America's Corrupt Elite. Who are some of the elite that you would point us to, and what is some of the corruption?
One of the big ones that I point out is Larry Fink, who is the head of BlackRock. BlackRock is one of the largest, I guess you could say, hedge funds in the world, or equity funds. Essentially, they control everything in the world. They have over $10 trillion in assets, and they use this money to corrupt and control businesses all over the world. Basically, any media company that you look at probably has a way that BlackRock is in control of them. They're very in tune with globalization and ESG. They're kind of the brainchild behind ESG, which is environmental social governance. They want to put forward the central bank digital currencies as well, and work with Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum on the Great Reset. I mean, these are a lot of the elite type of people. And the thing that, when I talk about elite, I think what is so important to distinguish when it comes to these people is that these are not God-fearing people. That's something that's very important, because a God-fearing person would never try and put themselves over God if they really believed it. The thing about these elites is that they feel like, because they have amassed so much wealth, so much influence over others, the ability to control people through power and fear and compliance, and the ability to create all sorts of new technologies, the transhumanism agenda and AI and all this, that they have fashioned themselves as new gods, that they no longer need any sort of otherworldly deity, or some set of morals from biblical standards or anything like that, because they are the ones who are the arbiters of these new moral standards, and they are the new gods of this world, instituting their will on the populace and the people of this world. And so I think that's very important to understand with these elites. When we think about these people, I always like to think about if they're God-fearing, and then secondly, if they fashion themselves as a god. And even if they don't, they're not going to say it. They don't come out and say, oh, I am a god of the world. It is about the way they act and the things that they do and they push for. And if you can decipher those things and look carefully at them and the people in the organizations, you can figure out who the people who are doing good for America are and the people who are doing ill.
Yeah. When you visit other countries, let's say you go to Ireland, you mostly interact with Irish people. If you go to France, it's mostly French people. Germany, mostly Germans. You come to America, we're such a melting pot of people, color, culture, background. I love it because it's really all that I've known. But I see as I get older that it seems like there's this invisible hand that is shaking the jar behind the scenes, trying to make us all hate each other. Do you think that that's individuals or corporations, or is that the media? Because it's better to have fear in order to sell advertising. Who do you think are the elites behind keeping that agitation between us as Americans?
Yeah, I think it's definitely all of those things. It's individual people and their organizations, their cronies, and all of this. The left loves chaos. The left thrives on chaos. Evil thrives on chaos. You know, this is when God came and created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:1. God didn't just create earth and rocks and water and these kind of things. He created order. God created order when he created the earth. This is why the left hates God. And again, why these elites try and fashion themselves as new gods, because this is what they really believe in. And they know that when people have chaos and the world is awry and people are fearful, then they can control them. So that is all of these different people and all of these different organizations, from the deepest levels of government with the administrative state that we have created, which protects itself. I don't know if you've ever read Democracy in America by Tocqueville, the French, I guess you could say, philosopher and aristocrat who came to America in the 1800s and documented this country and what he saw when he visited. But that is a clear indication of essentially what America is, with the soft despotism, as he calls it, with this massive administrative state that doesn't it doesn't dictate. It's not some totalitarian state dictating, but it softens. It makes people lazy. It makes them compliant. It makes them weak. And that's what we have in America today, with all of these different groups, the entities of the media, the technology companies, the science, the pharmaceuticals, the big tech, the consumerism industries of fashion and all this, all working together through this administrative state that we have created that turns the people into putty and makes them so that they are weak and malleable and compliant and not able to think for themselves. And even if they are able to think for themselves, usually they don't, because it's too scary to do so, and they'd rather just have someone take care of you. It's much easier to have someone else come and say, I'll take care of these things. You don't have to think about it or do it, instead of having to make the hard choices of your life and do it yourself.
Yeah. Wow. All right, couple more questions, Will. I appreciate you coming on. Who influenced you most as a child, and who influences you most as an adult?
As a child, I would probably say my older brother, who was a lot like a father figure to me, as well as my grandpa Chocolate, so we called him, who unfortunately passed away a little over a year ago. But those are my two biggest influences when my father was never around. My father was in prison for most of my life, and so these two men were the ones who molded me, and I love them more than anything. And it means a lot to have male role models. I mean, thank God for these two who were in my life to help me. But I know a lot of young men who didn't have the same luck as me, who never had a father, and then didn't have anyone else to be that masculine role model in their life. And that is one thing that I think is sorely lacking in America today. The person who inspires me most, I would say probably the person who I dedicated my book to, a man named Jake English, who's my pastor here in Tampa, who is just the most gracious and heartwarming and fiercely Christian guy I've ever met, and has been so nice to me and done so many things for me and taught me so much without ever asking for anything in return. He's just been the most amazing man. And so that's like, people will ask, they'll say, if you could have dinner with anyone, anyone alive, who would it be? And I say, I don't know, my mom, or or my pastor, or anything. Like, these are the people who I love. Like, why go and I don't need to go to dinner with Donald Trump or some crazy politician or celebrity or something. It's like, I have people who I love in my life now, where I would much rather go to dinner with than any of these other people. So those are probably the people who inspired me most.
Okay. Who do you think has the greatest influence over the United States of America?
In terms of I would have said Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump is the most important, or most, I guess you could say, famous person in the entire world. Every single person in the world knows who Donald Trump is, and the things that he says reach far beyond even the political spectrum. They just reach everyone. And so the way that he is able to mold the political landscape and social landscape of this country is phenomenal. I just don't think that it's to the same effect that it was in, say, 2016, around that time of the first presidential election with Donald Trump. Um, I would still probably say Trump. Um, yeah, I think I'd probably stick with Donald Trump as the most influential person in the world right now, with everything that he can do and the things that he can say, with how he's able to shape public opinion and vitriol towards people, and also love towards each other, and all sorts of different things. He has a lot of power.
Yeah, he definitely is a master of grabbing attention.
Yes.
I hope your book grabs a lot of attention. We'll definitely put it down below. But Will Witt, if people want to stay in touch with you, stay connected to your writing and different things, what's the best way to do that? And then I'm going to just point people towards Amazon or Barnes and Noble, wherever they can buy books to get Do Not Comply.
Of course, yeah, you can check out my Substack, thewillwitt.substack.com, for all my blogging and writing there. That's not in the book, as well as my newspaper that I'm the editor-in-chief of, the Florida Standard, the CFLstandard.com, and then all my social media is at the Will Witt.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for writing Do Not Comply. I'll leave a link down below, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, man.